Strictly speaking, the kingdoms led by David and Solomon were not true nation-states in the modern sense. They were more like a loosely organized confederation of tribes. This alliance was fragile from the very beginning. Strong tribal identities and mutual jealousy continually undermined its foundations. David himself came from a relatively modest, pastoral clan. Many of the more prosperous and culturally developed tribes in the center and north were never fully satisfied with his rule. Rebellions broke out even during David's lifetime, though the prosperity of Solomon's reign later concealed these growing fractures. Soon after Solomon's death, the discontent could no longer be contained. 10 northern tribes openly broke away to form a new political entity, the Kingdom of Israel. The remaining tribes of Judah and Benjamin, along with part of the Levite population, stayed in the south and formed the Kingdom of Judah, which continued under the rule of the House of David. The northern Kingdom of Israel was significantly larger in both territory and population. It was also wealthier and more culturally advanced. Yet roughly 2 centuries later, it fell before the expanding might of the Assyrian Empire. Had all the tribes remained united and created a strong, centralized kingdom, they might have become one of the major powers of the Near East. Instead, divided into 2 smaller states, both were too weak to stand against regional superpowers. Worse still, Israel and Judah often quarreled with each other over agricultural land and grazing rights, further weakening their defenses. Meanwhile, external threats grew. Egypt to the southwest and Assyria to the northeast watched the divided Hebrew kingdoms closely. Among them, Assyria had become one of the most formidable military forces in the world, armed with advanced iron weaponry and powerful chariot armies. By the mid-8th century BCE, the Assyrian king Sargon II decided that the time had come to conquer Israel. His armies swiftly crushed Israelite resistance. In 722 BCE, Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom, was destroyed. After nearly 200 years and 19 kings, the kingdom of Israel ceased to exist. Following its fall, tens of thousands of Israelites, including the king, were deported to distant regions within the Assyrian Empire. The Hebrew Bible describes this exile. The king of Assyria captured Samaria, deported the Israelites to Assyria, and settled them in Hala, on the Habur River, and in the cities of the Medes. From this moment, the 10 northern tribes vanished from the historical record. They became known as the 10 lost tribes of Israel, a mystery that has fascinated scholars, theologians, and explorers for centuries. What became of the lost 10 tribes? Historians generally believe that some exiles may have eventually moved to Babylon and later returned with Judah as exiles, while most assimilated into the surrounding populations. Over generations, they disappeared as distinct groups, much like many ancient peoples displaced by conquest. However, devout Jewish and Christian believers often rejected this interpretation. They pointed to biblical prophecies promising that all Israelites would one day be gathered again into a single nation under God. If the tribes were gone forever, how could these promises be fulfilled? For religious believers, the survival of the lost tribes carries profound theological significance. Their eventual return is seen by many as a sign linked to messianic prophecy. Christians, from their own theological perspective, long hoped that the lost tribes might be found so they could recognize Jesus and thus validate Christian doctrine. Centuries of searching because of this religious importance, the search for the lost tribes continued for more than 1,000 years. In the Middle Ages, reports frequently circulated claiming that one or more of the tribes had been found. In the 9th century, a Jewish traveler named Eldad Hadeni claimed to be a descendant of the tribe of Dan and insisted that 4 tribes lived in the land of Cush, often associated with regions of East Africa. In the 12th century, Benjamin of Tudela recorded numerous stories he heard during his travels across the eastern Mediterranean, reigniting widespread curiosity. During the 19th century, enthusiasm for the search remained strong. The French Jewish traveler Joseph Benjamin spent much of his life exploring the Middle East and North Africa. He met Jewish communities in India who called themselves Bene Israel, though he could not conclusively link them to the lost tribes. Christian missionary societies, such as the Hebrew Christian movement, also sent emissaries throughout the Middle East, Persia, and Central Asia. The English missionary Joseph Wolfe traveled extensively, even reaching Afghanistan in search of possible Israelite descendants. None of these investigations produced convincing evidence. At various points, other peoples were also proposed as possible descendants of the lost tribes. Some early Europeans suggested that Native American peoples were of Israelite origin, citing superficial linguistic or cultural similarities. Others believed that certain groups in East Africa, the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, might be linked to ancient Israelites, though modern scholarship suggests they adopted Judaism at a later period. Even certain 19th-century British religious movements claimed that Anglo-Saxons themselves were the true heirs of the tribes, claims now considered pseudoscientific. A modern scholarly view. In 1930, Duke University biblical scholar H. Rowley published a landmark study titled The Lost Tribes, a myth, urging people to abandon the fruitless search. He argued, like many conquered ancient peoples, the northern Israelites were deported, dispersed, and eventually absorbed into surrounding societies. Even the Jews who survived into later centuries were not purely descended from the ancient Israelites. Throughout their long history, they too intermingled with other peoples. Therefore, the idea of recovering intact, lost tribes had no historical basis. Following Rowley's analysis, the search for the lost tribes declined sharply. Yet occasional claims still surface, often driven by religious belief rather than historical evidence. The mystery endures, not because of proof, but because of its power to inspire hope, faith, and imagination.